just with
So wait, are they
these
doing verbs
interviews,
with
I want
They're doing
alongside it,
to
verbs
or
and the
convey
live
what
stream
my
at the
thoughts
same
are
time.
on the whole
okay? Let me go
concept
ahead
of
and
the
go down there then
metaverse
too.
in a very accurate
Well,
I'm
no.
in a
just
way
gonna
that
stay here.
doesn't
Yeah.
cause any sort of
Would
misunderstanding.
join.
Well, we're fate farming for you, so it's sort of we got to. Plus, you're not finished the story, right? You're not finished MSQ.
I am on Genova server.
Oh.
I play on 2 servers.
Oh. Well, you could go down and watch the thing. I feel bad making you like have to hang out with my dumbass. I can just play Star Wars or do something else. Like I don't have to be here. I just not me because there's going to be massive spoilers for me.
You'll have to go down to the dive theater.
Yeah.
Bye.
Just to wind up and breathe poison.
Oh,
Okay.
Because otherwise we're gonna run out of space in the arena.
Okay.
All right. Did we have any announcements? Were any announcements made at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In general,
yeah,
in general.
Kira just sent one out.
All right, in general, cool. All right, let me go ahead and stream it.
You have to move him off the poison part.
Oh yeah,
otherwise-
shit.
Yeah.
It's gonna start in
Like
so many. Trying.
Final Fantasy 14
So
live.
There it comes again. There's the stun, the toxic vomit one. As soon as you see that, hit the stun.
Yeah, they don't have like a wait. Oh, here we go.
Because they said it was going to be up on their YouTube.
Yeah, share screen. Alright. No, not mini player. Alright. There it is. Let me see if my food is here or what's the status. Oh, it's on its way.
Well, there you go. And do we know if we have somebody that's going to be leading for the Mount Firming?
Who started it?
Yeah,
Who requested it?
I think it was just something we're doing every other Friday.
Yeah, but someone had to request it, right?
Well, start it at least.
It was.
I mean, I can start it. Just pass me a lead.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I can run it charge as well since I was last time.
That works then.
Yeah.
Deb, do you want to do a Realm Reborn before your errands?
Nah, I'm probably just gonna take a break.
Let's see. I'll go into what's a good TPS class? Monk. There we go.
I'll join for birds if there's a spot after I farm Realm Reborn stuff.
All right. Let's see. Who needs the birds?
You wanted to?
Not yet. I'll join you because I want to do a Realm Reborn trials for my farming for the shield.
Okay, well, we're gonna get started as soon as we got a full group.
Yeah.
Swap to your application to resume. Fuck my life. Alright. Let's see. Does this mean I have to have this open up? People are screaming Vera hats.
Oh shit.
MC stuff for today's live later.
いい
はい、
ねの。
そして、本日はですね、in
Dex.
Japanese, and then Aimi-san will
Can
do
you scroll up? I think
Yoshida-san's
it's
voice in English, and I will translate
yeah.
myself. はい、そして今日の PLL はですね、前半戦
Or did they
は
just start the music?
ファイナルファンタジー
Can you still see
14
it?
の新たなる挑戦、次の
Click on the live, like
10年に向けてということで、吉田さんからいろいろご説明いただきます。
so like
そして後半はですね、
hover over the
休
video.
憩挟みまして後半は、
Oh, yeah.
フォーラムで事前に募集しました、
Here we go.
パッチ 6.0 をプレイしてみての、Q&A セッションをお送りしたいと思います。So today's later live has two major parts, and then
Alright,
first
my food is
half
coming,
is
so-
kind of presentation by producer director Naoki Yoshida, which is where we are and where we are going for next 10 years. And then we have a taking break, and then latter half is the Q&A session based on your gameplay of 6.0 expansion.
はい。
はい、ということで、始めてまいりたいと思います。
ですね、私がこっちを見てるとき、こうなってるときは、皆さんのコメントを見てるときなので、今日こういうシチュエーションすごい多いと思うんで、ご理解ください。
So you might see me turning my head sometimes when I'm speaking, but I'm actively looking at the comments that people are making as you watch the stream. So you may see me turned this way, but I am still participating. So just wanted to let you know.
まあちょっとね、日本のコメントでね、この手の通訳放送はテンポ悪いんだよなって言ってる人いるんですけど、まあグローバル全体でね、お届けしているので、吉田の長い話をですね、あゆみさん一生懸命ね、通訳してくれてるんで、そこはね、それを言われると我々ちょっと悲しくなるんで、そういう、まあファンフェスのステージぐらいで思って見てもらえると嬉しいかな。
And we do see some comments about how translations kind of drag on the pace. It doesn't feel as quick. But Amy is here to try to facilitate communicating Yoshida's comments. It makes us sad if you're disappointed that it's in two languages. But perhaps if you look at it like a FanFest stage event where we have the Japanese and English, maybe that might help it make
6.1? So 6.1 がっつりってことだけはないんですよね。
そうですね。パッチ 6.1 の内容と紹介に関しては、3月4日
はい、4日です。
に、パッチ 6.1 特集パート1の PLL をやる予定なので、6.1 の、まあ、でも今日ちょっと出ますけどね。6.1 の詳しいところはそっちに譲ります。
So yeah, today's broadcast is not literally going to be just about 6.1. We may touch upon it, but then the details are going to be explained on another episode of the live letter on March the 4th. This is JST, but we will go into details at that timing.
あとは、まあ、なんか、こう、重大発表的なね、ニュアンスで取られてるけど、楽しく気楽に行くので、皆さんもですね、緊張せず気楽に今日は見てもらえると嬉しいです。
And some people might be bracing for a very important announcement when we talk about today's broadcast, but that's not the intent. We would love for you to just relax and just have fun with the broadcast.
面白いですよ。
なんかこういうこと言うたびにさ、よしやめんのみたいなの出るんだよな。ついに俺さ、でも、いつだっけ、新情報発表会でさ、言ったばっかだよね。ライフワークだって言ってるんで、そういう話じゃないんですよ。
And I understand we were talking about like the future of Final Fantasy XIV, but every time we mention something like that, people are like, "Oh no, is Yoshida going to quit?" And no, I think I told us when we were doing our announcement showcase in February. It's like 14 is my life work. It's not like I'm going to just up and leave suddenly.
もうそんなんで嘘つきってやるんで嫌だから、なんだろう、そんなね、自分の去就をね、重大発表をしますみたいなね、ことは言わないですよ。
ちょっと恥ずかしいね。
I don't want people to be going around saying, "Oh, you're such a liar," because I mean, I'm not the type of person who would make these kinds of like my personal announcements on a live stream. So.
さあ、では、やっていきましょうか、早速。前半だいたいね、2時間ぐらい、後半も多分2時間ぐらい使うんじゃないかなと思います。なので、ご飯食べたりですね、今日土曜日なんで、飲める人はお酒飲みながらとかでも全然いいので、楽しくいきましょう。
So we're looking at least for the first part, we're looking at about 2 hours broadcast. And so just you're free to do like you have dinner or like eat lunch as you're watching the broadcast. It is a Saturday, so if you want to start drinking early, you're more than welcome to do so.
さあ行きましょう。では、画面切り替えてもらっていいかな。はい。はい。じゃあ早速いきますが、改めて今日お話しする内容のトピックおさらいしておきましょう。
Okay, so jumping right in, let me go over the topics we will cover.
で、まず一つ目はちょっとですね、まあ14これまで、正確にはね11年やってきているので、まあちょっと振り返りを最初にね、皆さんへの感謝も込めて、やりたいと思います。
First topic, of course, it's been about 11 years to be accurate, how long 14 has been going on. So we'd like to kind of do a little bit of a retrospect, just convey our thanks to our players and look back on everything.
で、まあそれを振り返った上でですね、まあちょっとこの先、じゃあさらにもう10年は僕続けたいと思ってるんで、まあこの先10年さらに14を発展させていくために、まあ新しい挑戦やっていきますよといろいろ、そこについて、まあどんなことやっていくのかというのをお知らせしたいと思います。
And then once we do look back on our past, then we look forward to the next 10 years. Because as I mentioned, I would love to continue having Final Fantasy XIV for yet another 10 years. So there are many different things that we want to do in order to continue expanding Final Fantasy XIV, many challenges that we want to take on. So I want to touch upon some of those items in today's broadcast.
で、ここまでいったら一回休憩を挟んで、放送の後半として3つ目、パッチ 6.0 行月のフィナーレ、プレイしてみて何かありますかというので Q&A 事前に質問募集していましたので、それに対していろいろお答えしていこうかなと思ってます。
And then once we do that, we will have a break in between, and then it'll go into the latter half of the show where we kind of asked the players, what did you think after playing 6.0? And so we will do a bit of an Endwalker Q&A.
あと10年から吉田リビングデッドを使う気だなみたいなコメントがあったりね。
We're seeing comments like, oh, 10 more years, huh? Is Yoshida going to kick off his Living Dead?
まああったよね、確かにね。吉田の量産を開始しましたとか、クローンの吉田が誕生したので紹介しますとか、そういうのじゃねえかって書かれてましたね。
But yeah, I think I've seen comments similar to that, and like people saying, "Oh, we have mass manufactured Yoshida clones."
でなぜか私はもう完了してますよって書いてあるんですよ。
そう。
Yeah, then I say I've done already. So something like that.
では早速いきましょうか。まずはまあ正確にはね11年なんですけど、大きくくくってまあ10年ここまで皆さんとねやってきたのをちょっと振り返っていきたいと思います。
Okay, so jumping into the timeline here, of course, accurately it's 11 years, but like we'll call this the 10 years of Final Fantasy 14.
まあいろいろありましたね。まあ2010年サービスを開始して、その12月に運営体制ね全部開発も、一新して、僕はここから参加ですね。
So first, 2010 was when it all started. Many things that happened caused us to sort of reconsider the development structures, and there was a lot of changes that were made in order to kind of reboot the title. So this is when Yoshida joined into the project.
で2021年の2011年の10月14日に、まあ、14日が縁起がいいだろうっていうので申請をやりますよという発表してますね。
And then 2011, October 14th, we were thinking 14th must bring us good luck. And that's when we announced that we are going to have Final Fantasy 14 Reborn.
海外の皆さん詳しいよね。あゆみさんもインタビューにいてくれたと思うけど、9番を遊んでみたいので9番のサーバーを復活させる気ありませんかってクラシックファイナルファンタジー14やる気ありませんかってナイトメアって答えたやつみんな覚えてて、ナイトメアってすげえ言ってんのコメントで。
I love how the comments from the West are, I love how they know all these details. And I'm sure Aimee had sat into the interviews as well, but people were asking about, oh, are you going to make an FF14 1.0 classic like WoW Classic did theirs? And Yoshida answered, Nightmare. And so people are calling the time of 1.0 in Nightmare. It's awesome.
で、まあ、2012年の11月11日にですね、時代の終焉トレーラー公開とともにですね、一旦申請の準備のために Q14 のサービスを、終了させていただいてます。
And of course, in November 11th of 2012, we titled it The End of an Era, and we sort of closed the service for the original version of Final Fantasy 14.
まあ、9番からねやってくださってる方も結構いるし、9番の捉え方って結構まちまちだとは思うんですけど、9番のラスト付近はそれはそれでまた独特のゲームデザインの MMO として結構ね好きだった、面白くなったんだよって言ってくれる人たちもたくさんいて、まあ、僕らシャットダウンするのを決めながらも作ってたところに対してそういうね評価をもらってたりするのはとてもありがたいことなので、僕らもすごいね実は励みになってました。
And of course, people who have been playing since the original 1.0 may have their different opinions about how the game had played. But there were people who thankfully acknowledged how 14 was starting to shift, and they did take notice about how the game design was unique, despite we were looking to sunset the original version. And so it was wonderful that people acknowledged that, and that was very encouraging for us as a team.
ちなみに9番から今日視聴してくださってる方でQ14 からやってるよって方、どうですか？手を挙げてもらってもいいですか？
So if I could have people in the comments, show of hands, I don't know how you raise your hands, but like anybody who's been playing since 1.0, the original Final Fantasy 14, we would love to see who's been with us since then.
お、めっちゃいるな。
すごい There's a lot. Wow.
What?
Thank you very much.
すごいありがたい。
That's amazing. Thank you
Oh.
guys.
まあここからね、あと10年お互い健康に気をつけて楽しんでいきましょう。
But yeah, we're looking forward to the next 10 years. So yeah, let's all take care of our health and keep going. That's awesome.
で、2013年ですね、ベータテストやりながら、2013年8月27日についに新生オルゼア正式サービス開始することができました。
So moving on, 2013, we start our beta testing for A Realm Reborn, and then August 27 of the same year, we were able to relaunch as A Realm Reborn.
振り返るとですね、2011年の3月ぐらいから一気に新生14の設計だけ5人ぐらいで設計をスタートして、2011年の6月から6人のプログラマーがコードを書き始めたのを覚えてるので、実質そこから2年2ヶ月で新生リリースしてるので、もうちょっと驚異的今振り返ると。
And looking back, so that it was 2011 in March, we started at least doing the framework, just the design structure first. And it was a very small team that worked on it. It was 5 people who started on the base framework. And then starting June of that same year, 2011, we had 6 programmers starting to write code. And considering it took about 2 years and 2 months to relaunch, that's just incredible.
で、念願だったですね、ファンフェスっていうのを2014年の10月からですね、スタートすることができました。今でも覚えてます。
And of course, by 2014, October, we were able to hold our very first fan festival. That was something that we really wanted to do.
初めてやった北米のファンフェスの基調講演でステージに上がった時の大歓声でですね、もう足が震えて
I still remember it today. The first time we did our fan festival, and we started out in the North America region. And when I took the stage to do my keynote presentation, and just the cheer that I received from the audience, man, my legs were shaking when I was up there.
で、初の拡張であるヘブンズワード、2015年の6月にリリースして、その後の8月に、全世界累計登録者数が500万人を突破したと。
And then next, we were able to launch our first ever expansion pack, Heaven's Word, in 2015 June. And then soon after, we reached 5 million registered players.
で、このあたりはですね、我々開発チームもですね、高難易度って言われてよしやっちゃるぞって言ってもうキリッキリなのをやったらですね、いや難しすぎんだろうってなってですね、我々もいろいろな失敗を繰り返しつつですね、今につながってる本当重要な時期だったと思います、ここは。
But this is around the time when people were starting to clamor for higher difficult content, and the dev team got so excited about, oh yeah, you want difficult? And so we gave you a really, really tough content, and people started complaining now about, oh no, this is too difficult, Yoshida, this is too difficult. And so we were trying to find that balance. It was trial and error trying to get to that nice balance. But I think it was really important that we're making that conversation.
あれでね、僕は人生の格言の一つをね、学んだんですよ。プレイヤーの皆さんには、いやー、ちょっと簡単だったなって言われるぐらいがちょうどいいんだなと。
And it was then that I learned this very valuable lesson, which is, I think it's best to keep the difficulty where the players would walk out of it saying, that was pretty easy.
で、グレンドリベレーターを発売したのが2017年6月で、まあ、この辺りからようやくこうバトルコンテンツ以外の、そのもう14の世界に住むみたいなことをより具体化していけるようになったのがこのぐらいの時期で、まあ、それがね、功を奏してですね、登録者数が、まあ、この時点で1000万人突破と。
And then, of course, Stormblood released in 2017 June, and we started looking at various other types of content aside from battle and combat, content that would involve the feeling of living in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. And I think that really struck a chord with people. People were resonating with it, which thankfully got us to our registered player number up to 14 million players.
思い出されるグレンのリベレーター初日のね、ラウバーン透滅戦。
すごかったですね。
And I still remember when Stormblood first launched, Rauban Extreme, and then I just that.
ありましたね。
And I think we all remember that.
まあ、あの失敗があってね、今の安定したキューイングシステムがあったりするからね。
But I mean, even with that failure, we learned from it, and we were able to build a much better queuing system.
そしてですね、2018年になると、全世界登録者数が1400万人を突破して、2019年には、1600万人を突破と。ありがとうございます。
So I'm sorry, this is where we hit 14 million is 2018 August. And then moving on, we reached 16 million players by 2019 May. So thank you so much for all the players that are staying with us.
そして続けてですね、2019年に、漆黒のヴィランズを発売し、その年末にはですね、全世界累計登録者数が1800万人を、突破となりました。
And moving on, we released Shadowbringers in 2019, and soon after, we surpassed 18 million registered players.
数字に関して言うと、単純に数字だけをこう見ていくと、そのなんていうの、増えるペースっていうのがばらついてるようにまあ見えるのかもしれないんですけど、実は体験したことのある人が増えれば増えるほど、新規が当然減るんですよね、パイが決まってるところから新しい人を呼ばなきゃいけないので、だからここまでの数字になってるのにさらに数百万増やしていくっていうこと自体は、とてもすごいことで、これは本当ね、まあ、開発運営チームの努力もそうなんですけど、マーケティング PR チームが、コミュニティの皆さんと一緒になって達成してきてる数字なので、本当にこれはね、誇らしい数字だと思ってます。
And looking at the numbers, it might seem like there's no real, like nothing of note. Oh yeah, the numbers are just increasing. But if you consider this, if we have a certain number of people already playing the game, and if we have a single pie that we're taking numbers out of, like you would expect the numbers to start going down, but it's interesting that we see more and more players join us even after all these years. We are seeing millions signing up. So, of course, I really want to acknowledge the development team, operations team, but also the marketing and PR teams working with the community to kind of promote the title and get the word out. So I'm very proud of their achievements.
そして2021年、去年ですね、12月2日にはですね、全世界累計登録者数が2500万人を突破し、ちょっと昨日の数字とかは見てないですけど、まだ全然まだ上がってってると思うので、で、12月7日ですね、すいません、2週間ほどちょっと遅延をさせていただくことにはなってしまいましたが、行月のフィナーレを発売して、ハイデリンゾディアーク編完結というところまでこぎつけてこられたなと。
Of course, 2021, which is last year, we surpassed 25 million registered players. I did not see yesterday's numbers or like as of yesterday's numbers, but I do understand that our numbers are still increasing. And then afterwards, I know we had to delay the release by about 2 weeks. Again, apologies for the delay, but we were able to release Endwalker, and finally we were able to conclude the overarching story of Heidelin and Zodiark.
まあ長かったようで僕は結構あっという間の11年でした。でも本当にね、世界中のプレイヤーの皆さん、光の選手の皆さん、メディアの皆さんもね、関係各社の皆さんにも本当にものすごくこんなに支えてもらうタイトルは他にないだろうと思うぐらい支えていただいてここまで来れたので、改めて本当に感謝をお伝えしたいと思います。ありがとうございます。
And it feels like a long time, but man, these 11 years went by very quickly for me. And all of our Warriors of Light, our players, members of the media, all of our supporting partner companies as well. There were just so many people that supported us throughout this all. So I do want to take this opportunity to convey my gratitude from the bottom of my heart. So I sincerely thank everybody.
はい。まあ、あとは本当ね、開発チームにも、本当に厳しいスケジュールでやってきてて、まあ、実は拡張パッケージそのものの開発期間って1年とか、下手すると、1年切ってたりするんで、まあ、本当に頑張ってきてもらいました。
And I also want to acknowledge the development team as well. They were always working against a very harsh schedule, and even developing some of our expansion packs. Sometimes we have only about a year or even less than a year to get through all of the tasks that needed to get done. So I really want to show my appreciation to them as well.
さて、ではこれを踏まえてですね、ここまで歩んできたその11年、9番の状態を考えれば、これ以上ないぐらいの成功をさせていただいたと思ってます。ここはあんまり言葉を隠さずに成功できてると思ってるので、それでいいと思ってるんですけど、まあここまではある意味もう過去になったので、ここからさらに次の10年また挑戦を続けていきたいと思います。
And looking at the trajectory here and the path we've walked down, I think I want to consider this a success from what we had taken, and what state it was in when we had first taken on the project, and to bring it to where it is now. I'm not ashamed to declare it. It might be a little awkward in the Japanese, but I believe it is a success. And I think it's a good thing that we've gotten here. But now that we have gotten this far, all of this is now in the past. And so we want to look to the future. We want to see what kind of challenges we can take on.
というわけで2つ目のセクションである14の新しい挑戦と題してですね、まあ、今後どういうことをやっていくよというのをお伝えしていきたいと思います。
So, for the second part of this presentation, as you see, it is entitled Newfound Futures. So, I would like to discuss what we are intending to do.
まずですね、僕としてはですね、社長からやめろって言われるか、まあ、やめろって言われても抵抗するとは思うんですけど、開発チーム、運営チームからやめろって言われるか、死ぬかぐらいの以外では、14をやめる気がなく続けていきますんで、この先もぜひ皆さんよろしくお願いします。
And me personally, as Yoshida, unless the CEO says, Yoshida, you need to leave, and even then, I think I'm going to fight him. Or if like the development team, the operations team want to kick me out, or if I, God forbid, die, those are the only extreme cases I would even consider leaving the 14 project. I want to continue working on Final Fantasy 14. So your continued support will definitely be appreciated.
というわけでですね、まず今回その10年さらにこう14をせっかくねここまで日本初のそのサービスでこの規模まで来れるってなかなかあることじゃないので、この先の10年に向けてまずは 7.0 をめがけて、新しいことに挑戦していこうと思ってます。
So of course, with this title, and considering that this game was launched from a Japanese development studio and being able to expand to this global scope, it's a rarity, I think. And so my next goal, my future goal is now looking at 7.0 and leading up to that, what can we do?
コメントが7.0って言ったかで。
大丈夫大丈夫。もうシナリオ会議の1回目やったから。合宿やったから。7.0 はやるよ。
People are already speculating about, oh no, 7.0 confirmed? Well, I mean, we are already talking about scenario for 7.0. I'm not afraid to say that we do intend on doing a 7.0.
まずここに向けてちょっとコンセプトを話をさせてもらいます。まずその一つ目がこちらになります。
Now, that being said, I do want to establish what my thinking is and the concept behind what we're trying to do leading up to 7.0. And this is the first point.
まあこれ具体的にどういうことっていうのはこの後ちゃんと、お話ししようと思います。
And of course, I will go into detail as to what this exactly means.
そしてですね、7.0 に向けて、チャレンジとしてですね、こちら、第1次グラフィックスのアップデートの準備開発っていうのをやっていきます。
And then next, again, leading up to 7.0, and one of the challenges that we want to take on is our first graphical update, at least the preparation and the development for it.
まあ、なんで第一次ってついてるかっていうのも後でね、この項目の掘り下げでちょっとお話ししようと思います。
And of course, when we dive into each of these different points, I will touch upon why we are calling this the first graphical update.
まあ一応先に言っとくコメントが結構多いんで7.0 で PS4 が遊べなくなるってことはないです、それはないのでお約束しておきます。
I do want to clarify though, because I am seeing a lot of comments wondering about this. This does not necessarily mean that we are ceasing the support for PS4 as of 7.0. So I do want to clear that out first.
そしてですね、今日3つ目、せっかくなのでパッチ 6.x シリーズでどんなことをやっていくかというのもお知らせします。
And then the third point, I mean, since we are here, I would like to take the opportunity to cover what we are planning to do throughout the 6.x series as a sort of roadmap.
はい、では各項目、詳しくよりお伝えしていこうと思います。
Diving into the details.
まずコンセプトの一つ目ですね。一人でもみんなでも遊べる RPG へ、さらなる進化をしていきますと。
So our first concept, an even better RPG, alone or with friends.
これ、何かというとですね、読んで字のごとくなんですけど、その、ファイナルファンタジー14、一応ジャンルとしては MMORPG って呼ばれてます。
So, I mean, it is what it says, of course, but yes, I understand that Final Fantasy XIV as a game genre would be categorized as an MMORPG.
そこでですね、僕この11年ファイナルファンタジー14をやってきて、世界中のプレイヤーの皆さんとイベントだったり、ファンフェスも含めてですけど、本当たくさんのゲーマーの人たちと話をしてきました。
And of course, throughout the 11 years of doing Final Fantasy XIV, we did various events, gaming events, including Fan Festival, and I had the opportunity to speak with different gamers.
そこでですね、あとそのマーケティングチームに市場調査とかをしてもらって、これね定期的に拡張のたびにやってるんですけど、やっぱりそこで出てくる答えっていうのが、なかなかブレイクスルーできないなっていうのがあったりします。
And of course, I would have my marketing teams perform market research as well. And this is something we regularly do when we start to plan for upcoming expansion packs. And with the information that we receive, and there's always like a question that we never seem to find a way to break through.
2つあって、1つはファイナルファンタジーシリーズ大好きなんだよ、すごいファンなんだ、全部やってるよ、ただし11と14以外ねっていうのがめちゃくちゃ悔しい。
So there's actually two, and one of them is we see there's a lot of players that love Final Fantasy and many that claim they've played all of the Final Fantasies except for 11 and 14, which is very frustrating.
まあ、11もね、今かなり、アップデートをかけて、かなり大部分ね、ソロで遊べるように快適に、してますが、14はさらにその先へ行きたいと思ってます。
And of course, we are paying attention to Final Fantasy XI players as well, and we've made various updates. I think it has become very solo friendly recently, but with Final Fantasy XIV, we want to go beyond that.
あとはこう、もう一つはですね、オンラインなんだよね。めんどくさい。人と遊ぶの嫌。なんかこう、人間関係作るの嫌っていうのがですね、やっぱりナンバーワンなんですよね。その、プレイをしない理由っていうところで。
The second point we are trying to reach a breakthrough is people who comment about, oh, online play, I don't want to deal with having to play with other people. I don't want to develop relationships online. And that's actually a very large reason, if not the number one reason, many players kind of hesitate playing 14.
だから10年かけて MMORPG っていうジャンルじゃなくて、一人でもみんなでも遊べる RPG っていうジャンルにしたいと、14を。
So what I want to do here is spend the next 10 years and break out of that MMORPG category. I want this to be an RPG that can be enjoyed alone or with friends.
まずなので、7.0 でまでの間、フェイスシステムの大規模アップデートっていうのをやっていきます。
So, as a lead up to 7.0, or until that time, we will continue to make updates to the trust system.
パッチ 6.1 から 6.5 までの5つのメジャーパッチで、全メインクエストの必須 ID と4人の透滅戦をすべてフェイス対応します。
So as it says here, trust compatibility for all main scenario dungeons and 4-player trials to be added in patch 6.1 through 6.5.
まあ順次なのでね、パッチ例えば 6.2 とかを見ると中途半端なところまでしか対応されてないとかいうことがある可能性は高いんですけど、それにね怯えているといつまで経ってもできないので全部一気には不可能なので、もうなのでこの 6.1 から 6.5 つまり 7.0 までの間を次に飛び上がるためにもうどんどん順次やっていくという期間に当てさせてください。
And so, of course, these are going to be incremental implementation. And so you might look at, say, patch 2 point something and 6.2, and you might notice that maybe not all of the dungeons have been supported with a trust system compatibility. But if we are afraid to make progress and be just in the middle of work in a certain major patch update, we won't be able to make progress. I think it's impossible to do everything at once. So we are trying to address this as we can, and we're looking at this as a preparation for 7.0. And so we would like to ask for your understanding as we lay these foundations.
その第1弾となるパッチ 6.1 では新生オールゼア編のうち、2.0 範囲をすべて対応します。
So the first implementation, patch 6.1, will make a Realm Reborn, and this is just patch 2.0 range, and the scenarios duty become trust compatible.
そしてですね、それに伴って一部初期のですねメインクエスト ID とか、透滅戦もリニューアルします。
And then further improvements will be made to some low-level main scenario dungeons and trials.
でちょっと注意なんですけど、蒼天の石ガルドに入ってからの8人透滅戦ストーリー上に出てくるあれらはちょっとやっぱりコストを全見積もりしたんですけど、どうしてもこう 6.1 から 6.5 までの期間では対応しきれないので、8人の透滅戦に関しては 7.0 以降順次対応していくつもりです。
You may see the disclaimers on the bottom, but for the 8-player trials, especially those with the Heaven's Word expansion, I'm afraid we are unable to update it at this time. We tried to calculate all the cost and the resources that it would take for us to address all of this within that sort of 6.1 through 6.5 timing. But I'm afraid we would be unable to allocate the resources for it. So we will get to it after 7.0. Yeah, these updates will be considered for 7.0 or later.
まあもちろん皆さんご存知の通り、その通常のねマッチングがなくなるわけじゃないので、あくまでストーリーを一人で進めていきたいっていう人のための機能なので、レベリングルーレットだったりね、マッチングっていうところはそのまま継続していくので、そこはご承知おきください。
And of course, we don't intend to do away with the regular matching systems. Your leveling dungeons and queue matching in duty finders will still be active and available. These trust compatibility is primarily for those who have a strong desire to play through these story dungeons on their own.
で、ですね、8人透滅戦は今回行月のフィナーレでハイデリン透滅戦でテストケースとしても含めてやったんですけど、やれることはなんだろう、確証を得られたんですけど、まあ相当やっぱりコストがかかるっていうのと、ギミックから調整していかないといけないっていうこともあって、まずは数の多い ID から優先させていただいてます。あとはね、8人なんで責任半のかかり方がちょっと減るんで、やっぱり。まあここは逆にマッチングの面白さみたいなところも味わってもらいたいので、一旦7.0 以降にさせてください。
And of course, with these 8 people trials or 8-person battles, we did try it out with the Mother Crystal trial, and we were able to see success as like a test case, but it did require a lot of resources for us to build it. And then if we were to start applying that system to existing dungeons, we'd have to adjust the mechanics so that it would accommodate for the trust system. So at this time, we made the decision to move forward with just the instanced dungeons. And with an 8-person trial, I think that sort of reduces the responsibility per person going into the match, hopefully. So we're hoping that players would still jump into like a duty finder and hopefully get the enjoyment out of matching up with random people. So at this time, we are unable to address it within the 6.1 through 6.5 period, but we are looking to it for 7.0 or later.
でちょっと注意なんですけど、はい、まあどうしてもフェイスっていう呼び方をすると、暁といけんのかなとか名のある NPC といけんのかなってイメージがちょっと強いと思うんですけど、ストーリー上こうそのマッチングでしかいけないからこそ、じゃあ俺は他のことをやってくるみたいなのでこうみんなちょっといなくなったりとかしてたと思うんですよ。あれまで全部変えるはさすがに無理なので特に序盤とかは冒険者ギルドのメンバーだったりとか、暁の光のなんだろう、こう光の加護を持っているであろう他のメンバーみたいなイメージで組むケースが多いです。
And I want to make another point of caution here. Whenever we say trust compatibility, I think the thought that, oh, can we go into this dungeon with members of the Scions or any sort of named NPCs? And some of these story dungeons have key players kind of leaving the scene, like where the Warrior of Light goes into a dungeon and say somebody goes up and say, oh, I'm going to take care of matters over there. We can't have them come back just to join you in the dungeon. So in those cases, especially the earlier dungeons, you will see your trust members as like members from the Adventurers Guild or maybe other people who have the Echo accompany you in these dungeons.
ただ、まあキーになるストーリー上のキーになるポイントで、まあこいつはやっぱり本当はダンジョン一緒に行ってほしかったなってプレイヤーの皆さんが思ってるようなポイントは、シナリオ一部カットシーンも含めてちょっと変更してでもできるだけそれにまあ添えるように、やっぱりニーズヘックと対峙するときはエスニアンも行って 欲しかったなみたいなやつは、できる限りそういうシチュエーションはなんとか対応していこうと思ってるので、一部ねそれもちょっと変更する部分があるかなとは思います。全部は無理なんで、はい、そこはご了承ください。
But that being said, there are certain key points in the story where we do understand players might have a very strong desire to have particular NPCs accompany you in a dungeon. So in some extreme cases, and not extreme cases, but like some key points, the team will make some adjustments. We may have to change a part of the script so that it'll make sense for the character to join you. An example I can come up with off the top of my head is probably the Nidhogg battle. I'm sure a lot of people would have thought like, oh, it would have been nice to have Estinian join as part of the Trust NPC. So we're considering having that available. So there may be some content that accommodates for certain NPCs to join you. I'm afraid we can't address all of them. We can't make it happen with all of the dungeons. So your understanding on that would be appreciated.
そしてですね、ごめんねちょっと長くて、6.1 特集パート1の時にまた詳しくお話ししようと思いますが、新生オルゼアの後半って結構今のレギュレーションと違ってしまってるこうダンジョンとかが多いので、かなり手が入ってます、いろいろ。
And of course, with the details of 6.1, we will have a dedicated live letter for that, and I will delve into details at that time. But I do want to mention that much of the content, especially in the later half of ARR, differ in how the regulation is set up. So there are changes that have been made.
まあ例えばトトラクとかの、ドゥーンってなってヘビースローがかかるヘビーがかかる床とかなくなってます。
For example, like when you go into the Thousand Miles of Totorak, and you step on those like poison floors, and all of a sudden you are hit with heavy or slow, we're actually getting rid of that.
あとはちょっと Q14 から申請するのに急いで作ってちょっとライティング良くないなとかいうところのダンジョンもちょっと絵的な調整もそれなりにやってます。
And there are also some aesthetical changes that we wanted to make. There were certain areas of the earlier part of FF14 when we were trying to quickly just relaunch as a Realm Reborn. So there were areas where lighting may not have been 100% to what we would have been satisfied with. So we went back in and adjusted those as well.
そしてですね、まあ他にもですね、8人パーティーバトルの一番最初であるビットアッティン教習戦なんですけど、なくなります。
And then one of the first 8-person party battles that you encounter, I believe, is Camp Westwind. And I want to mention that we are doing away with that.
皆さん大ショックを受けておられますね。People are getting shocked.
帝国の盾としてね、武人として、身を挺してやってきた、ね、帝国将軍の一人、まあ将軍ではないけど正しくは、8人でフルボッコはいかがなものかと。
Like, I mean, he's like a very prominent figure. I think it would be very humiliating for 8 people to come in and just beat him up. So we actually allocated the resources to rebuild that battle so that it's going to be a quest instanced battle that you go in.
まあ他にも内閣外閣と呼ばれている8人ダンジョン、あれらもですね、今回すべて4人用 ID に作り直してあります。
And then of course, the Praetorium and the Castrum Meridian, sorry, I can't pronounce it. Meridianum. Those very long Guardian bases that you need to go. They were originally 8-person content, but we are going to be changing it so that these are 4-person instanced dungeons.
なのでアルテマウェポン戦も切り出して、4人用としてシナリオモードを作って、であとラハブレアが憑依したサンクレットさんを8人でただひたすら無言で殴るっていうのも ストーリー用のクエストインスタンスバトルとして作り直してるので。
大好評です。
はい。
And so, your battle with Ultima, or the Ultima weapon, will be changed to a 4-person battle. We are adjusting the scenario mode for that. And then where you go in and silently beat up La Habrea, aka Thancred being possessed by La Habrea, is also going to be adjusted so that it's like an instance during a story quest.
というわけで、まあそんな風にコストもですね、レギュレーション、今のプレイフィールにできるだけ近づけられるように、いろんな改修をしつつですね、パッチ 6.1 から 6.5 にかけて、4.x までの ID ですね、全部対応していこうと思いますので、よろしくお願いします。
So, yeah, in a nutshell, we are going in and making many adjustments so that it fits with, kind of follows suit better with how the game feels at this time. So, throughout patch 6.1 through 6.5, we will be looking at the various content up to the 4.x series, the different instance dungeon to make adjustments.
さあ、ではこのセクション以上で次へ行きたいと思います。
Okay, so moving on to the next section.
2つ目の新しい挑戦ですね。この、6.1 から6.5 までの期間、まあ 7.0 リリースまでの期間を使ってですね、まず、まあ長期運営やっていく上で、第一次のグラフィックスアップデートを、裏でね、作業させていただきます。
So our second concept, and again, this is going to be the preparation that we will be doing throughout patch 6.1 through 6.5, leading up to the launch of 7.0. It is a long-term, or like preparations for long-term operation of the game, and we want to be doing this in the background, but we'll be preparing for our first graphics update.
ただ、まあなぜ第一次グラフィックスアップデートとってるかっていうと、まあ2時も3時もあるんだろう、もしかしたらってことなんですけど、なぜかというともうここまで11年運営してきてると、もう尋常じゃないリソース、グラフィックスアセットが存在してます。はい。
So the reason why we named this the first graphical update, and that's of course to imply that there will probably a second and or third after this, but our game has been in operation for about 11 years, and considering all the graphical assets we have produced, it's an insane amount.
やっぱり一気に極限まで上げようとすると、絶対コンバートミスがあったりとか、そもそもコンバートの物理時間が足りなくて、もうデザインチームが無理です、絶対できませんっていう答えになってしまうので、まあやれることを一回やって引き上げたら、またその状態で安定が見えたら次のをやってっていう形で、まあその第1回目が来るんだというふうに思ってください。
And so if we attempted to update every single piece of graphical asset or resource that we've put into the game all at the same time, we might run into issues of conversion errors, or it's just physically takes a lot of time to convert everything. And consulting with the graphics team, they already know that we can't address everything all at the same time. And so what we're trying to do is address these in phases so that we can test out certain elements, see how they work, and if it seems to be stable, we move into the next phase. And so I think with our first graphical update, this will be like the first time we start testing some of these elements.
4K グレープスでめっちゃ吹いたんだけど。
I saw a comment that says 4K grapes. Thank you so much for that. That was hilarious.
あそこに 4K とかね、なんか40万ポリゴンとかかけてると、それこそ Q40 みたいにキャラクター全然表示できねえぞってことになっちゃうので、まあちょっとこれから詳しく説明はしますよ。
That's hilarious, but like imagine spending so much resources just to get the grapes to be 4K resolution, and imagine spending 400,000 polygons just to depict a piece of fruit. We won't have enough resources to render our characters on screen. But let me go into the details.
そのグラフィックスアップデートは一気に、7.0 での投入を予定してます。
So again, these graphical updates are intended to be implemented in 7.0.
まあその次期拡張パッケージまでの間っていうのを、まあ、僕らのそのグラフィックスのアップデートのシェーダー追加したりとか、いろんなものを追加していくテスト期間だったりプログラム期間だったりそれに合わせたグラフィックスアセットのコンバート期間というふうにさせてください。
So until 7.0, this will be, again, our preparation period. So this is where our team will be testing out various additions to the graphical elements, including different shaders. We'll probably need to write more programs. This is where when we're going to be doing our asset conversions, etc.
で、ここが重要なんですけど、あくまでやっぱりマルチプレイのゲームであるっていうのをぜひ覚えておいてほしくて、やっぱり画面全体の美しさ、9番から申請した時に感じていただいたように、やっぱり総合的な美しさ、世界の美しさっていうのを追求していきますよと、コンセプトとしてはね。
And of course, one key point that we want players to understand is that this is still a multiplayer game. And so we want to strive for the aesthetic quality of the overall picture and looking at the sort of beauty or the element, aesthetically pleasing sort of overall picture.
だってこうまさにね発売されたホライゾンのさクオリティでさ動くと思われたら困るわけだよ。あれで俺たち300人とか描画しなきゃいけないんで、いやできはするんだけど、みんなの PC 動かないよ。
確か
に。And I see games like Horizon Forbidden West, and I don't want to get people to think that we'll raise our graphic quality to that. It's amazing, yes, but imagine having to render 300 different characters on screen at the same time at that quality. And it's not physically impossible, but then I don't think it's going to run on anybody's PC.
そこは覚えといてね、みんなね。
So please keep that in mind.
ここね、なんか勘違いされるのが一番怖い。
That's the scariest thing for people to kind of misconstrue.
で、当然なんですけど、アニメーションとか、まあその世界全体、画面全体の美しさっていうところにやっぱりアニメーションとかライティングシステムっていうのも大きく寄与していると思うので、このあたりもアップデートしていきます。
And of course, considering the sort of overall aesthetic, animation is going to be a key element we're looking at. Lighting is another element that we want to adjust as well.
まあ例えばアニメーションに使っている、よくねメモリがって言われますけど、メモリの割り当てをちょっと増やすことによって今までより長尺のこうエモートモーションが作れるとか、あとまあそのライトの数が増えることで実は潰れていたバックグラウンドのディティールがより見えてきて、リソースに手を加えなくても綺麗に見えるみたいなところもあるんで。
So what we mean by different updates to animation and lighting systems is, for example, I know people would automatically start talking about, oh yeah, memory issues with animation. So if we revisit some of the allocation of the memory for animation, it might allow us to create emotes with a longer animation loop, or with lighting, they're just having more lights than we had originally set up would allow for details that would have been sort of washed out or like not visible because of insufficient lighting to kind of show up. And so that will allow for an improvement in the graphical quality without us even having to adjust the elements that are already in the game.
まあ重要なところです。はい。ス スタンドアローンのゲームクオリティにはなりません。
うん
これをですね、皆さん頭にすり込むためにもですね、寝る前に必ず一度復唱していただきたいぐらい。
And again, very important point. I want to stress again, the new graphics will not be comparable to those of standalone titles. This is again very important. I want you to remember it. I want you to repeat it before you go to bed. That's how much I want people to remember.
まあとはいえやっぱりグラフィックスいろいろ手を入れてパフォーマンスというかね処理はより動作が重くなりはするので 7.0 では最低動作保証スペックの条件が、まあ、変わるのは確定です、ただできるだけ多くのスペックにね対応できるっていうところはこれまでのポリシーでもあるので、捨てずにやっていきたいと思ってます、
So that being said, we do want to update the graphics for sure, and so that means your processor might require more power in order to render these graphics properly or like efficiently. So we will probably have to update the system requirements for your machines and your PCs. We will try our best to accommodate for as many models of machines to accommodate with the changes, but we do want to make you aware that it is pretty much guaranteed that we will have to update the system requirements.
でやっぱり気になるプレイステーション4なんですけど、この 6.x 期間中に、先行投入すると思いますけど PS4 版の最適化をやっていきます。
And I know people are wondering about PlayStation 4 support as of 7.0. I think what's going to happen, and this will probably be done prior to the launch of 7.0, so sometime within the 6.x series, we do want to optimize the PS4 version for sure.
で、さらにですね、まあ PC 版にあるようにグラフィックスオプションのカスタムっていうの PS4 版少ないんですけど、あれを増やしてですね、新しいその描画とか入れるとやっぱ重くなる部分があるので、重くても綺麗でいいやという人はオンにしてもらえばいいんだけど、まあオフにしてそのフレームレートを優先するみたいなことができるようにしていくので、PS4 のサポートっていうのも少なくとも 7.0 のタイミングではしっかりやりますので。
So, and on top of that, there are various graphical configurations that you can set up on the PC version. Like you can customize some of the like display options, and we understand that it's a bit lacking in the PS4 version. So we do want to implement options in the configuration so that you can select like prioritize frame rate, or if you want to, if you're okay with performance kind of dropping slightly, but still have the graphics performance, then you can select that option, whatnot. So I do want to assure you that we will continue supporting for PS4 at least until 7.0.
みんなどう思うんだろうこれ。
What people's reactions are. Some people saying, "Oh, is that me?"
そうそうそう。なんかさ、多分ね、これじゃないよね、多分みんな求めてるの。
I don't think this is what we are looking for. This is not what we would desire.
なんか疲れた吉田って書かれてる。
Some people are saying this looks like a very tired Yoshida.
そう、なんか違うでしょ。
Yeah, but it kind of does feel awkward.
まあここまでリアルにはならんす。
So we aren't going to be working to make it look this real.
まあいわゆるフォトリアルを追求していくとグラフィックスアップデートってこっちに行きがちなんですけど、おそらくファイナルファンタジー14の世界やキャラクターが気に入ってくださってる方って多分こっちを求めてはいないと思ってます。
And some games, of course, they're intent is to lean towards that photorealistic depiction, and people tend to lean in this direction. But I think for those who enjoy the aesthetic of Final Fantasy XIV, this is not necessarily what we want to begin with.
では、今そのグラフィックスアップデートって実はテスト開発もスタートさせてるんですけど、テストスタートしてからまだ1ヶ月と1週間ぐらいなんですね。
So with these graphical updates, we are already starting testing actually, and it's been about a month and a week.
なのでその1ヶ月と1週間ぐらいテストをして、まあこれだったらもう今出してもまあいけるだろうここまではと。まあこれ以上を目指すんだけど、まあ少なくとも一旦お見せしてもここまでは間違いなく大丈夫であると 7.0 でっていうのを用意してきたんでちょっと見ていきましょうか。
And so we are still very early in our testing stages, again, about a month or so testing, but we do have results that we're seeing that is, of course, we're going to aim higher than what we're going to be showing you, but I think it's coming out pretty nicely, and we are relatively confident. So let us show you some of these images.
こちらがですね、テスト期間1ヶ月目のサンプルです。キャラクターですね、まず。
So from first month of testing, so this is one of the samples.
これ左が今で、右がテクスチャーをハイレゾリューション化してます。髪の毛も含めて。で、あとシェーダーを、1枚入れてます。
And so what you're seeing is the current image on the left, and then on the right, we've made the textures high resolution, and we've added a layer of shaders.
あと、セルフシャドウって言って、自分の髪の毛の影が顔に落ちたとき、まあ、その自分のオブジェクトが自分に影を落とすのをセルフシャドウって言うんですけど、そこも調整してるので、結構ね、セルフシャドウ実はすごい気になってて、カットシーンとかでも。
And one thing that we did pay attention to was the self shadow, or whenever there's like an object that drops a shadow on yourself, especially if you look at the bangs and the shadow it casts underneath it. That was something that I was I wanted to address, looking at the cutscenes in the past.
で、まあこれ1ヶ月目のサンプルなので、もっと上目指せるとは思ってるんですけど、動作保証あまりにも重くならないっていう意味では、今一旦お見せできるのはここまで。まあこの上さらにいろんなことをやった上で最適化していって、まあやれるより高いところは目指していこうかなと思ってます。
So of course we do want to strive for even better, but at this time I think from 1 month of testing and making sure that the game itself runs properly, I think this is what we can show at this time, and then we'll continue to test and we'll continue to sort of improve and then apply optimization.
まあいわゆるヒロシと呼ばれてる彼でやるとこんな感じです。
Of course our Derplander.
で、ちょっとミコッテのサンプルです。
Here's a sample of the Mikote.
まあ、戦月賞のボケ具合が、まあ、なくなったりですね。髪の毛の柔らかいそのカールの印象とかってちゃんと出てるのと、まあ、セルフシャドウがボケてないんでね、綺麗にかかるようになります。
Of course, you may notice the face paint. The war paint is a lot crisper now. And then, as mentioned earlier, self shadow is nicer. I think it's brings out the softness of her face.
まあこれがだいたい1ヶ月目だっていうのをぜひ認識しておいてください。
Again, just to remind you, this is after testing for about a month. まあこの方向性で良さそうよね、やっぱりね。みんなのコメント見てると。 Looking at everybody's comments, it seems like we are on the right track in terms of like the direction we want to take it to.
そうですね。Yeah, it looks like so.
ララフェルがね、一番難しいんですよ。
And the Lalfell was actually quite challenging.
なんかリアルにするところがなくて
there are no areas really to make it quote unquote realistic, you know.
まあでも髪の毛綺麗になって、目の周りはものすごく鮮明になって、まあキャラメイクしておけばね、もちろんいろんなパターン作れるとは思うんですけど。
But I think the hair has definitely gotten more defined, and then the eyes has become very crisp, and it looks a lot more alive, so to speak. And with being able to character create, I think it will allow for players for a broad range.
そうね、肌の感じをどこまでなんだろう、本当にツルツルにするのか、ララフェルは。こう少しそうは言ってもちゃんと肌っていう感じを出すのかは、結構ね調整が難しいところだとは思ってるので、ただ皆さんが求めてるであろう方向性は理解してるつもりなので、しっかり種族ごとにですね調整しながらいきたいなと思ってます。
And it's still a challenge to figure out how do we depict the surface of their skin. Like, do we make it completely like flawless, spotless, or do we actually give it some texture to make it look like skin? We want to believe that we understand what the players are looking for, but it is something that we still need to kind of explore.
なんて言ったってね、11年も皆さんと一緒にこのゲーム作ってきてるんで、
そうですね、
皆さんが求める方向は理解してるつもりではあります。はい。
But again, we've been with you guys for about 11 years at this time, so we want to believe that we understand what the players are looking for.
ですいません、ちょっとテスト1ヶ月目ということでですね、キャラクターサンプルとしては以上になります。またなんだろう、途中でね、ファンフェスのタイミングとかあればまた途中経過とかね、お知らせしていけたらなと思ってます。
So yeah, because we are still in the early stages of testing, as for character samples, that is all that we have at this time. We're hoping that we can continue to update everybody on the status. Perhaps maybe next time we can do it at like a fan festival or something like that.
じゃあ改めてですね、そのキャラクター、まずそのグラフィックス、第一次グラフィックスアップデートで、キャラクターに関する表現のアップデート項目をお知らせしておきます。
Okay, so just wanted to recap all of the different elements that we look to update for our first set of graphical updates in terms of characters.
まずですね、全体的にテクスチャーを高解像度にしていきます。髪とか肌とか、それから今日ちょっとね、ご紹介できてないですけど、装備品のテクスチャーの解像度も上げていきます。
So first one would be higher resolution textures, which includes hair, skin, and we weren't able to show any examples today, but we do want to improve the textures of the gear as well.
で、さらにですね、これはシェーダーと呼ばれる、処理になってくるんですけど、質感の表現というのを向上させていきます。例えば肌、それから装備品の金属部分、あと布って、布用のシェーダーっていうのが実はあって、Q14 では入れてたんですけど、重すぎて外してるんですね。そろそろいけるだろうということで、布がもう少し滑らかに布っぽく見えるっていうシェーダーなどを今、研究トライしているところです。
And then the next item, and this is relating to various shader processing, which is improved material qualities, of course, skin, metal, and fabric. It's interesting because in the 1.0 or like the old version of Final Fantasy XIV, there was a shader or like a process that was applied to fabric so that it would look the texture quality would look like fabric, but it was too heavy of a load on processing, so we had to remove it in the relaunch. But we're testing various ways to see if we can apply something like that to make fabric a bit more, well, smoother and more fabric-like. And we're still kind of researching and trying out various methods.
そしてですね、キャラクターに対してのライティングとシャドウの強化というのもやっていきます。特にね、見栄えに直結しやすいこうセルフシャドウに関してはすごくずっと気になってたんで、
And then again, lighting and shadow, better lighting and shadow effects, especially for the player's shadows.
まあさっきもお話しましたけど、できるだけプレイヤーの皆さんの今のキャラクターに持ってるイメージっていうのが変わらないように、綺麗になったな俺のキャラって思ってもらえるようにしていきたいと思ってます。
Of course, again, our goal is to make it so that the overall appearance of player characters will be altered as little as possible. We want you guys to see the graphical updates and think, oh wow, my character's become pretty.
で注意点が2つあって、
はい、
まず1つ装備品。信じられない数のアセットがあるので、あれを 7.0 までに全部コンバートするのは不可能です。
So 2 points of caution. The gear, we mentioned about updating the material quality of gear, but you know, there's an incredible, unbelievable amount of gear available for all of our player characters. And considering we'd have to convert them all, we will not be able to get through converting all of the gear by the 7.0 timing.
なので 7.0 で新しく実装されている装備っていうのは全て今回のグラフィックスアップデートを経た内容で作っていきます。なのでクオリティがより高いもので全部用意するつもりです。
So any gear that is implemented from 7.0 will have gone through the process of the updated graphics. So of course those will be of the higher quality.
ただし、できる限りこうプレイヤーの皆さんがミラプリとかをしておしゃれによく使っているものに関してはちょっと優先的にできる限り対応をして、またパッチ 7.x シリーズで徐々にその古い装備っていうのも新しい仕様に少しずつこう対応していけるようにっていうふうに思ってますので、ちょっと数年がかりで全体が上がっていくことにはなるかと思いますが、よろしくお願いします。
But we understand that there are certain glamours that people use often. So we want to look at those and try to get those done with a higher priority in terms of like which to get to. And throughout the 7.x series is when we will address the rest of the previous equipment or gear. So I'm afraid it will take at least a few years to address all of the different textures.
あと NPC です。今回ね、プレイヤーのキャラクターみんなクオリティアップするじゃん。バーンって。NPC 全員も無理だと思っていて、7.0 までには。
The other thing are the NPCs. I know we talked about updating the player characters and the graphics on those, but I'm afraid we're not going to be able to address all of the NPCs by 7.0.
申し訳ないんだが、クオリティの高くなった NPC と、まだなんと順番が回ってこない NPC っていうのが出てしまうと思うんですけど、ちょっとそれも許していただけると助かります。
So I'm terribly sorry to say this, but you may start seeing NPCs that have gone through the graphical updates and those that have not gone through the updates. But please, your understanding would be appreciated.
これをね、全部やれって言うと、いや、もうじゃあ、グラフィックスアップデートやめましょう。無理です、無理ですってなっちゃうんで、ちょっとちぐはぐっていうのが出ちゃうタイミングがあるとは思うんですけど、それをやっぱり承認していかないといつまで経ってもできないと思ってるので、ちょっと許していただけると。なのでちょっとイルベルドはまだ後でいいかみたいな。
And if I were to tell my team that okay, we need to do everything, then people are just going to throw in the towel and be like, no, this is impossible. So I'm afraid there will be times at which not all of the NPCs will have gone through their graphical updates, and it might look a little disoriented or disjointed. But if I don't allow for that to happen, we won't be able to get to it. So again, if you could forgive us for going through that, that would be appreciated. Like, Airbird might not get his graphical update as quickly as maybe like the Sultana, but
テレジアデレジはっていうお声が結構あるんですよ。ただですね、残念な、なんとテレジアデレジってプレイヤーの なんだろう、キャラメイクで作られてるんで、僕らが手を下さずとも、あいつ勝手にクオリティ上がってしまう可能性が高い。
Some people are asking, oh, but what about telegy and adelegy? And I realize his expression is part of the parts that you can select when you're creating your character. So because we're updating the player character facial parts, telegy adelegy is going to have his graphical updates already. So he may be an exception to those NPCs.
まあというわけでプレイヤーベースで組まれてるものはね必然的にそうなるんですけど、まあナナモさんとかはねやった方がいいかなとは思ってるんですけど、ちょっとまだ精査まではしきれてないので、ちょっとそういう状態が出るとは思うんですけど、よろしくお願いします。
So yeah, any characters that are built based on facial parts or body parts that are available for players to utilize will probably be updated simultaneously with like the player character graphics. But there are certain key NPCs that we're also looking at. Maybe the Sultana, but we have yet to sort of assess, and we will continue to sort of explore the options.
で、まあちょっと今日お見せしたのは繰り返しになりますが、テストをスタートしてまだ1ヶ月ちょっとのデータなので、さらなるですねクオリティの向上に向けて他の種族も含めてですねテスト続行していきます。いずれ装備とかもねこんな感じになるよというのもお見せできればと思ってます。
But yeah, again, what we showed you was only about a month or so of testing. So we're hoping to provide you with more updates as they come in. Perhaps the other races, perhaps we can provide you an update with gear, etc. in the not so far future.
で、そうだな。あとは結構コメントであったんですけど、装備の干渉なんとかしてほしいって、あれは正直どうにもならないです。物理エンジンを入れて、計算でかわすしかないんですけど、それをやるとやっぱ動かなくなっちゃうと思うので、あとやっぱり装備の干渉を許可してる僕が、もういいとこれは割り切ってくれって言ってるから今のペースでそのアセットギアが報酬が装備がリリースできてるっていうところもあるので、努力はしますが根本的にオフラインのゲームのようにはならないので、はい、そこはすいませんご了承ください。
And I'm also seeing comments about can you do something about like gear or equipment or like player characters like body parts interfering with the graphics of equipped gear. And I'm afraid that is something that we cannot address fully. We would have to put in a physics engine in there, and that would cause for some of the characters to kind of not move properly anymore. And plus, I, as the director, have allowed for those imperfections to my team. I'm afraid we're just moving on with it, or else we won't be able to keep the pace in releasing these different gear and the different designs that is available. So I'm afraid we are unable to address it fully to match something that of a standalone game. Sorry.
さあでは次はですね、ちょっと BG、マップに関わるところもテスト1ヶ月ちょっとのサンプル持ってきました。
Okay, we have more samples though. This time it's for various backgrounds and like map elements.
まずこれは単純に、テクスチャーとかに何も手を入れずに、配置できるライトの数を増やすっていうテストのサンプルです。
So this first image is a test of just simply the number of lights we can place in a certain scene without it touching any of the textures or surfaces.
配置ライト数をですね、複数増やすとこんな感じになります。
So we just added a few more lights in a particular scene, and what you see is in the right side of the image.
ライトがですね、遠くに左側ね、1灯しか焚けないので、ちょっと見てほしいのは、手前側にあるデスクに影がほぼ落ちてないのが、右側複数ライトによってちゃんと影が出るようになってるでしょ。
So if you look at the one on the left, we were only able to place one light source in the scene, but in the picture on the right, we were able to place multiple lights to give it a more realistic look. And as you can see, the desk is now casting a shadow.
まあ当然分かりやすく上の方にライトさらに1灯追加されてるので、まああそこまで作り込んでたのにライトが当たらないことによって全部黒で潰れちゃってたのが、まあ、しっかり見えてくるようになるので、これね多分プレイじっくり見ていないとというか受ける雰囲気が変わる。